The mansion was silent at 3 a.m., the kind of silence that felt heavy enough to crush the air itself. Outside, the wind scraped against the tall windows as if trying to warn the sleeping giant inside. Yet inside the master bedroom, Alessandro Moretti, the notoriously feared Mafia boss who could silence an entire room with a single glance, was suddenly wide awake, heart pounding, breath uneven, and jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. What had ripped him from sleep wasn't a nightmare, nor the weight of the enemies he'd made over the years. It was a soft, trembling voice drifting faintly from down the hall, a voice so gentle, so private, that hearing it felt like intruding on something sacred. He rose, instinct sharpened by years in the underworld, and followed the sound only to freeze at the sight before him, his maid, Lucia, standing in the dim glow of the kitchen lamp, clutching her phone to her chest as she recorded a soft, emotional voice message for someone who clearly meant something to her. And in that moment, jealousy, raw and unexpected, crashed through him so violently it shook him more than any rival ever had. Pushpin before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support truly helps these stories reach more hearts. Alessandro stood hidden in the shadows of the corridor, unable to pull his gaze away from Lucia. She was only 24, soft-spoken, hard-working, and often too gentle for a world as sharp-edged as his. She arrived months ago seeking nothing more than work and stability, never asking questions, never prying into the secrets of his life. But tonight, she wasn't the quiet maid who swept hallways unnoticed. Tonight, there was a tenderness in her voice that he had never been privileged to hear, and it stirred something unfamiliar inside him. The way she held her phone as if it carried her whole world, the slight tremble in her breath between recorded sentences, the shimmer in her eyes that caught the faint light, all of it struck him hard. He didn't know who she was speaking to, but the way her shoulders curved inward made the message feel intimate. And that intimacy, something he was excluded from, made something inside him burn. He wasn't used to this feeling. Jealousy had never been his companion, not in this form. In business, yes, territory, power, respect. But over a person? Over someone who wasn't even his? It unsettled him profoundly. He tried to rationalize it. Lucia was free. Lucia owed him nothing. But the thought of her voice softening for someone else, her eyes filling with emotion for someone he didn't know, left him unable to walk away. He stood rooted, fiercely protective and irrationally wounded by something he had no right to feel. Years of living with walls around his heart made this moment almost unbearable. Because deep down, Alessandro realized this wasn't sudden jealousy, it was the quiet truth he'd ignored for months. He cared. More than he intended to. More than he should. In the dim kitchen, Lucia finished her message and lowered her phone, her small shoulders curling slightly as though carrying something heavy. She exhaled shakily, wiped her cheeks softly with the sleeve of her oversized shirt, and leaned against the counter. In that moment, she looked young, fragile even, like someone standing on the edge of something painful yet trying to stay composed. Alessandro's chest tightened. For all his power, all his ruthlessness, he didn't know how to comfort someone without breaking the moment. He didn't know how to step forward without appearing intrusive or intimidating. So he withdrew into his room quietly, but sleep abandoned him completely. He lay awake, wrestling with a storm of questions. Who was she messaging? Why so late? Why did her voice crack? And why did he feel as if he had been replaced in a position he never officially held? The questions felt childish for a man of his stature, but they haunted him anyway. Days passed, and Lucia moved through the mansion with the same grace and quiet discipline as always. But Alessandro watched her more closely now, without meaning to, without wanting to. He noticed the faint exhaustion under her eyes, the way she forced smiles when the other staff joked, the way she checked her phone and quickly hid it away. She wasn't the carefree presence she once was. Something had changed, something she was carrying alone. And strangely, that broke him more than the jealousy itself. He wanted to know who had caused the heaviness in her heartbeat. He wanted to fix it, protect her, shield her from whatever shadow she had walked through. But he didn't know how to ask without revealing the depth of his concern. Lucia had always been grateful for her job. She cleaned quietly, worked diligently, and always remained respectful despite hearing whispers of the man she worked for. She had seen his temper, his coldness, the aura of fear he carried like a second skin. Yet she also saw him on rare nights when he walked the hallways restless, troubled, unable to sleep, moments that revealed a vulnerable, human side he never allowed others to witness. She respected him deeply for the burdens he silently carried. But she never once imagined that he watched her too, noticed her small efforts, her gentle kindness, her quiet strength. She had been invisible her entire life, being seen felt foreign. One evening, as she was sorting laundry, she received another message. Her breath hitched, and her eyes clouded with pain she tried desperately to swallow. Alessandro wasn't supposed to be home early, but he appeared in the doorway quietly. Lucia startled, quickly lowering her phone as her gaze darted away. She murmured an apology and reached for the next shirt to fold, but her hands shook. Alessandro noticed. He noticed everything these days. The ache in her posture. The sadness in her eyes. The way she was holding herself together with thin, trembling strings. He didn't confront her, not harshly, not with authority. Instead, he walked away with a helpless tightness in his chest. He was a man who could command entire territories, negotiate with dangerous men, and protect his empire with unwavering control. But when it came to a young woman with tired eyes and a fragile heart, he felt powerless. That powerlessness drove him to quiet observation. He waited patiently, watching her interactions, noticing the times her phone pulled her away from herself. And slowly, painfully, he pieced together the truth. Lucia wasn't messaging a lover. She wasn't whispering sweet words to someone she belonged to. She was speaking to her younger brother, a boy battling an illness back home, scared and alone in a hospital bed she couldn't afford to visit. The voice messages were her only way to comfort him, to soothe his fear, and to reassure him that she was working hard to pay for his treatment. The realization struck Alessandro like a blade straight through the heart. Shame washed over him, heavy and suffocating. Jealousy had blinded him when she was carrying a burden far greater than anything he had imagined. She wasn't in love, she was fighting to keep someone alive. And she was doing it quietly, without complaint, without asking for help, even when the world seemed too heavy for her small hands to hold. Painfully, gently, something in Alessandro shifted. The jealousy dissolved, replaced by something deeper and purer, a desire to protect her in ways she had never been protected. He watched her a little longer that night, the way she whispered another goodnight message, her voice trembling with the weight of love and fear intertwined. She didn't know he stood outside the door, his chest tight with the ache of understanding. She didn't know her strength moved him more than anything he had ever witnessed. And so, slowly, patterns began to change. Lucia found grocery bags stocked with her brother's favorite snacks, even though she had never mentioned them aloud. She found her salary quietly increased without explanation. She found the mansion filled with a gentler silence, as if someone was trying to make her burden easier without exposing their intentions. She didn't know why these little miracles were happening, but she accepted them with heartfelt gratitude. What she didn't know was that the man behind them was silently rewriting his own heart, piece by piece. As weeks passed, Lucia began to heal emotionally. Her brother stabilized. Her late-night messages grew lighter, filled with hope rather than desperation. And Alessandro, though still distant and guarded, felt relief every time he heard the softness return to her voice. He had fallen for her, quietly, deeply, genuinely. Not with the intensity of a possessive man, but with the tenderness of someone who finally understood what it meant to care without demanding anything back. He admired her strength, her quiet endurance, her unwavering love for her family. And though he never said a word, his heart recognized a truth he could no longer deny: Lucia was the first person who made him want to be a better man. The